Welcome to Pique Your Interest, your go-to podcast for all things mortgage and real estate. Hosted by Tanner Greenwald and Tim Malaskis. We bring you expert insights to help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Pique Your Interest podcast, the podcast where we seek to demystify all things mortgage and real estate related. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Tim Malaskis. I'm a loan officer here at the Millersville branch.
And I am Tanner Greenwald with the Greenwald team here at our Millersville branch as well.
And we have what I think is going to be a pretty fun topic today. We're going to do some myth busting. So there are certain things that, when you're buying a house, your parents or, somebody that's gone through the process before, it might say, oh, by the way, don't do this or do this or, whatever the case might be. And so, not everything that everyone says is true. And Tanner and I put our heads together. We came up with a list of 10 things that we think we hear a lot or like questions that we get from people. And so we just want to make sure we're, doing the best that we can to educate people and busting some myths. Yeah. So without further ado, Tanner, take it away.
Yeah, so another thing, all real estate agents are the same. I've actually heard that before too.
Oh.
Which
times.
I don't necessarily agree with because, the agents that Michelle and I work with, we work closely with them and there's a reason we work with them. We don't just pick out random agents from a hat and give them to clients kind of thing. We have standards and we have things that we want our agents to be able to teach, inform, whatever the buyer, because at a certain point we pre-qualify them and then we send them off. So we're trusting somebody else with one of our clients and it's important. So there are agents out there who are part-time and that's not a bad thing. But, if you're a part-time agent and you're treating it like a part-time job, maybe if you're house hunting diligently as a client, don't go after a part-time agent. Go after a full-time agent who can answer calls all the time and can take you out and house hunt, whenever you need to be doing that. But to say all agents are the same, real estate agents, I don't believe that. And I don't back that. So
no, there's definitely a difference in quality. Mm-hmm. It's just like in every aspect of, any job. There are really good loan officers. There are really bad loan officers.
Right.
There's really good everything and really bad everything. So it applies to real estate as well.
It's like saying every teacher is bad.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like there are some really good teachers, there's some really bad teachers. Yeah. It's just that's what you're going to get in every walk of life. There will be people that are really good at what they do. There are people that are middle of the road and there are people that are really bad. So to lump anybody together in any category like that, it doesn't make sense. Quick life hack, if you were looking for a really good real estate agent, Tanner and I are the people that you would come to get a referral for a real estate agent because we work with real estate agents every day.
Yeah.
So we know who's doing business, who's good at what they do, who's got the knowledge that you're going to need or, the inside scoop or the, the pocket listing or whatever it is. We know who those people are and who really have their finger on the pulse of what the real estate market looks like.
Yeah, and good agents are ready for that call. They're ready for that referral. And we know that. So that's why we pass off business to them.
Yeah.
Typically people come to financial people first to, pull credit, see what they qualify for. And, we are then able to give them referrals, real estate agents referrals, and that's how the whole process works. So it's a very team mentality, a team situation. So it's very important to know you're working with a good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else you got, Tim?
I've heard a rumor that you should only buy a house when the market is hot. First of all, I don't know how you define what a hot market is.
Right.
But yeah, I guess we saw that in 2020 and 2021 when it was absolutely crazy. And, one of the reasons you wouldn't want to buy a house when the market is hot is because, in 2020 and 2021, we saw a lot of people buying houses that, first of all, never went to those houses, buying a house sight unseen, not getting home inspections, not getting septic inspections, not learning the things about their house that they need to know. Yeah. If you are buying in a market that's red hot like that, you could be setting yourself up for some kind of future pain. You find out a month after you buy your house that, your septic system's got a leak. Well, guess what? Now you need a new septic system. Maybe you buy a house and, it's the middle of July and your HVAC blows. Guess what? You probably could have found that out during a home inspection. So it doesn't always behoove you to buy a house at the top of the market it's really hard to time the market too. You don't know when it's going to be hot and when it's not. If I was talking to a real estate agent the other day, and they have a seller client that wanted to have their house on the market by the end of August. Something came up. They didn't get it on the market until the end of September. Well, now it's been 2 weeks and they've only had like 2 showings in the last 2 weeks. Whereas 2 months ago, I was a lot busier than I am now. Mm-hmm. You were a lot busier than you are now. Yeah. The market was just, hotter at that point. And so, it's really hard. The point of all that is it's really hard to time everything perfectly. You don't know when the market's going to sort of like tip in the other direction. Because, for the longest time, we were in such a seller heavy market. Mm-hmm. We're not in a buyer's market now, but we're swinging that way slowly. Yeah. And so if you're trying to time it so that, you're going to hit it at a perfect buyer's market, you're going to have a really hard time timing that because you just don't know. It's like people, recently we had a Federal Reserve rate cut. Interest rates were pretty good at the time that the Federal Reserve, cut rates. There were some people that I was working with that decided they were going to wait until after the Federal Reserve lowered rates and see what happens in the weeks after that to like time it perfectly and lock in a refinance. Well, here we are a month later, and almost every day in the last month, interest rates have gotten worse. Mm-hmm. So you might think that you're able to time it, or based on some educated decision, you might think you're able to time it. But trying to time something and define what hot is or what a cool market is really hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just an opinion almost, like what is considered a hot market kind of thing.
Yeah. But even if it is hot, again, you still don't want to be doing things like waiving inspections and not learning the things you need to know about your house to make educated decisions. Because, who wants to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a repair that you might have been able to figure out beforehand? Maybe you wouldn't even have bought the house in the first place.
Yeah. I'm too controlling for that. Like I just am. I would not be able to deal with that.
All right. Tell me one more thing that you've heard that you want to bust today.
So one thing we've heard is you must settle in one location for life. And I actually have heard this from family members too as well. But that's not true. Especially nowadays, it's like I could see that back in the day when, that people just bought homes and they stayed in the homes forever. And then when their kids got older and unfortunately they passed on, they would, add the kids the title, the kids would get the house. And that still happens like nowadays. But the average home buyer stays in a home for about 8 to 13 years nowadays. And then they go and they buy a second home or, whatever they do kind of thing. So people aren't staying in homes for the duration of their life anymore. They're staying in it for whatever they need. Maybe they had more kids and they need a bigger house. The economy's changed, the market's shifted, whatever the case is that they need to buy another house or they want to, it's happening more frequently than it was back then. Yeah. I think, people have more opportunities with money, investing and stuff like that. So they have more money to play with a little bit. So that gives them more opportunity, if they want to upgrade or whatever. But to say that you're going to stay in one house for a lifetime, I just don't think that's realistic. Maybe for some people it is, but I just think for most people nowadays, especially in the economy that we're in, like our economy is changing, I think, more frequently than it even was back then. I can't really speak on back then because I, was either very small or not born yet. But at the same time, like I listen to stories that my family has talked about when it comes to home buying and what interest rates were back then. So that's another thing. Interest rates were super high back then. I think my parents bought their house with over a 10% interest rate. So it's like people just maybe couldn't afford to do it so much back then. Right. So it was just like, just stay in the house for the duration of the time.
Yeah. I think technology has made it easier too.
That's another thing. Yeah.
During COVID, you saw not everybody, but a lot of people were able to work from home, work remotely. And so you didn't have to be 15 minutes from the office. Right. You could be 5 hours from the office and you still could operate the way that you were supposed to and keep the job that you're keeping. So it became easier for people to move outside of, whatever that commute that they had before. Right. I think the technology that we have has allowed us to be able to do things like remotely work.
That's a good point. I totally didn't even think about technology.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to be in one place at one time. You can still have the same job.
Yeah.
Which people seem to be hopping from job to job a little more frequently now than they used to. But you also have the ability to work from home, work remotely, go in once a week instead of 5 times a week. So maybe you could move a little further away and you're okay with that one-time commute every week. Yeah. So I think technology has changed that a lot. COVID and technology together changed that a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And lastly, Tim, what do you got for us?
One of the things that I hear is that you should always offer below the asking price, as a buyer when you're looking at a house. And I would say
today.
sometimes that's true. Right now in the market that we're seeing, right now it's the fall of 2024. We are seeing a market that's shifting a little bit again toward buyers. Sellers don't have as much power as they once did. And what you're seeing is homes sit on the market for a little bit longer. You are seeing open houses where you didn't always see open houses because a house sold. You listed a house on Thursday, it was gone before Saturday or Sunday. Yeah. So you didn't have to have an open house. But now you're seeing houses sit for a couple of weeks, a month and a half. You're seeing open houses. Yeah. And so, in 2020 and 2021, you could not offer below asking price. You were offering a lot of times significantly over the asking price, like 10 or 20% or even more in some markets. So if you were living with this piece of advice that says, hey, you should always offer below the asking price to start a negotiating, trend, that wasn't going to work in that market.
It's just not realistic.
Yeah. And if let's say you're going to go buy a house today, well, today's Wednesday, there's probably a bunch of houses coming on the market tomorrow. Yeah. You are not going to go tour one of those houses and offer below asking price the day that it comes on the market. That just doesn't make sense. Yeah. There's a time and a place for everything. Mm-hmm. And houses that have been sitting for a while lend themselves to offering less than the offer price, getting closing cost help from the seller or whatever terms you want to negotiate. Hey, I want to have a home inspection. I want to check out the well and septic. I want to inspect the fireplace. You have those options for houses that have been sitting on the market a while. The same thing with, if you're dead set on not paying full price for something, the week that it goes on the market is not your time to buy that house. Yeah. It would be, weeks down the line if that's the house that you want to buy and that's the strategy you want to employ. But again, Tanner and I know really good real estate agents, and good real estate agents can explain that market to you and say, hey, I get what you're trying to do, but here's why it's not going to work this time. Yeah. Or that's a perfect strategy for this house, and here's why it is. That's, I would never say in a blanket statement, you should always offer below asking price. That's just not realistic in every market, not with every house anyway.
I was going to circle back to the whole real estate agent thing as well, because that's what they also do. They look into the homes that you're interested in. They almost stalk them, just to see if they drop price in any way. I had an agent that was texting me earlier about that. Shout out, you know who you are. But he was like, hey, the house that this client was looking at previous to, it decreased in price a little bit. Can we rerun the situation? Yep. But good realtors will look out for those types of things for you, and that better helps the clients. So totally touching on that too.
Yep, I agree on that. Yeah. So that's the podcast today. Hope you found it enlightening. Hope we busted a couple of myths and helped you realize that some of the things that you might have been the myths you've been operating under are not exactly true. I'd be curious to see if people have other myths that they want us to bust.
Comment if you've ever heard anything from parents or just older generation people that you're like, really, is that true? We want to hear too. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. I'd love to do a part 2 of this sometime where we have extra myths to bust. So give us some material. That way we can come back at you another time and bust those myths. Anyway, hope you had a good time. Hope you learned something, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.